morning, everybody, and thank you for allowing TIA to give a quick presentation this morning and a panel discussion. I made some changes to my notes based on Joe's presentation, so I can't use the word use case, so we'll figure out something else when we get to that point. Quick introduction. Sure. Okay. Quick introduction this morning. I'll allow each person to introduce themselves to the panel. We'll go through a brief overview of what we're doing with the TIA working group and explain what that's all about. And then we'll have a panel discussion and a couple of topics. So, Allison, if you'd like to start by introducing yourself, your company, and what brings you to this conference.
Thank you so much. I'm Allison Bowen. I'm with Immersion Edge, and we do immersion cooling for high density, and we've been doing it for a really long time, and now we're going to be doing it on the edge. So very excited to be part of the Edge Data Center Working Group. It's really been wonderful to see how things are playing out and to be a part of, just a small part of, where they are saying all the edge, where it's going to be, how it's going to be rated, everything that has to do with the Edge Data Center Working Group with TIA. So
very good, thank you. You guys have a big announcement today.
Yeah, we had a big announcement today. So Lenovo, powered by Intel, has been working with Immersion Edge for about a year, and we now have the Lenovo servers that you're able to put in the single-phase dielectric fluid, and you have the warranty to back it up. And so now there's, that was pretty much the last hurdle that immersion cooling had, was that the OEMs would say, okay, I'm not afraid to go ahead and put my $100,000 server in this, fluid, and that was pretty epic for us. We're really, really thrilled with that. So yeah.
Congratulations, and everybody here's get a chance to stop by and take a look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next up is Tom Wadowski.
Hi, I'm Tom Wadowski. I'm from HDR, which is an architect and engineering firm. We are working with a lot of data center companies out there, from large to small, and really I've been in the data center industry for the last 20 years doing design and support for customers who are trying to kind of come up with the data center solutions that they need. And really the edge is kind of the next step of evolution in the data center industry. And that's one of the reasons why I've been involved with the TIA, and really the TIA standards that have been out there for a while. Data centers need to evolve and really come up with edge planning and standards as well.
Great, glad to have you. And Tom Kraft.
Yes, good morning. My name is Tom Kraft. I'm with CommScope. We're an infrastructure company. My job within the company is to work within the business unit of mobility and to work on strategy and technology development. The two areas where I work primarily are on edge and edge data centers and edge power, to try to enable some of what we'll be talking about today.
Great, Tom. Glad to have you. So for those of you that may not know, TIA is the Telecommunications Industry Association. We're a nonprofit, technology vendor agnostic organization that's been around for close to 80 years. And we basically have 4 different parts of the organization. One is the standards group that we were talking about. We are the group that has developed TIA 942, which is the de facto industry standard for data centers. We also have tower standards. We have in-building structured wiring standards. Together we have over 3,600 standards, and we're an ANSI accredited standards development organization. So our job, as I tell people when I have one floor in an elevator, is we standardize chaos. And what we see in this industry right now with edge data centers is a lot of talk about what they are, where they're going, what their use cases are. That's all fine and dandy, but in order to make everything connect together, interoperable, secure for the next 30 years, we have to look at this as a 30-year investment. We need to develop standards. So we have a working group. You see many of the logos of the participants of the working group. We've been doing this now for about 18 months, close to 2 years. Our focus is on the infrastructure, the hardware of making this stuff work. How do you connect it? How do you power it? How do you cool it? how do you secure it? I always tell the story of in Texas. I live in Dallas. What I fear most at night, it keeps me up, is putting an edge data center out in the middle of somewhere, and some Yahoo in a pickup truck takes a rope around it and yanks it off and drags it down the street. That will and can happen, so we've got to make it secure. This is a remote, unmanned facility. We did a recent survey with our suppliers and manufacturers as part of our group. Back last year, the October timeframe, we released a position paper on what and why edge data centers needed, latency, speed, and all that. Now we're working towards what is a data center, how do we define it? So typically under 1,000 square feet, not staffed, remote location, single space, so it's not a multi-room environment, much less cable, so multi-purpose network service, fiber and copper. Redundancy can be achieved in a number of different ways. We can build it in if it's critical. We can use virtualization down the chain. So Joe mentioned 5.9 reliability. That's a TIA standard. That's TL 9000. Appreciate the shout out. We have to evolve that standard to no nines, which is virtualization. So if an edge data center goes down, how do we virtualize it down to the next one? Low cost goal with high density. So these are going to be located where the service is required. So it could be in a building, it could be in an IoT environment, it could be in agriculture, it could be in a hospital, radio over the air network. So again, a lot of the same characteristics came up in terms of where these are going to be located and what they're going to look like. These may be pre-manufactured, cookie cutter in some cases, where they're just straight out of a box, back in the box. And again, the problem that we're trying to solve is latency, and as we move towards 5G, security resilience going to require new methods to be looked at. So part of our panel discussion will be to talk about those. Located anywhere, it's not a use case than an example. What the Edge Data Center Working Group has done is we've developed a white paper about what an Edge Data Center will do in terms of performance. Now we're also focused on types of locations. So we had a paper that came out, Tom and the team were part of developing that. It came out just a few weeks ago. It's available on our website, which is TIA.online.org. And those are free papers. We're working on other papers around site selection, operations, administration, maintenance, automation, power. We're working on developing the rating system for an edge data center. What's that going to look like? Joe mentioned in his presentation, risk considerations are huge. So we've got groups that are focused entirely on that. Security and cybersecurity, thermal cooling. So a lot of different areas that the standards group is working on. As you saw, the logos, there's about 40 companies involved in this working group. It's all volunteer activity, and we appreciate the work of the team. So from there, what we'd like to do is go back and talk about some of the major things. So, quick overview. What I wanted to do is start with Tom and say, do you have any addition to what the definition of what an edge data center is that you want to add to this conversation?
Well, I'd rather answer a question on heat transfer and cooling electronics than the definition of an edge data center. Based on a lot of the commentary, we sit in meetings for hours talking about what the definition is because we think it's going to help us. I think basically it's a location. It provides a service at a balance of cost, latency, and throughput. There's two types. There's infrastructure, and then there's the device edge. And I think within that range, we've used that to help define some of these criteria for types of locations and site selection and such. I'll leave it there.
Tom, you want to add?
I think that there's it's really easy to kind of talk about edge and what it is and what it isn't, but it's really many things to many different people, right? I mean, that it's not really a well-defined location because it can be in a remote location, it can be inside an existing building that may not have been served for the purpose originally of data processing or information gathering. And it's part of the infrastructure development for the telecommunications industry too. So, you know, if you look at that, the edge for different clients is different locations really. So it's not something that can kind of just put a pin in it and say this is what it is. It's going to be many different things to many different people.
Allison?
I took away some really great things from the event yesterday, and one of the things that they said a couple times was, our internet is broken. And I really like that because I think that when we start to think and dissect what the edge is going to be, my top two is obviously how do we improve the latency issue, and of course for me latency and density kind of go together, and when you start talking about that 10 millisecond mark and how we achieve that, and then you talk about redundancy on the edge, so you're essentially making everything double, right? So you're talking density, and you know the gentleman, I forget who it was yesterday, said that someone had said they're going to be driving their autonomous car from the cloud, and he's like, that's not going to happen because there are certain services with 10 milliseconds that it doesn't matter if my transaction doesn't happen, but in an autonomous car situation, someone's going to die. So we definitely have to understand how we're going to get there, like legitimately, how are we going to get to that mark? And what was it that the gentleman, I keep referencing back to a couple of the gentlemen yesterday, and they were talking about first responders and being able to have to locate in a and that is not achievable at this point. So you're seeing a lot of applications on that medical side, I think.
Yeah, medical, and her reference to MARTA is at TIA, we also have a smart buildings program, and we see the requirements for in-building. There's legislation right now, it's part of what we do at TIA as well. There's legislation that's going to get passed in the next couple of weeks that will define requirements for first responders to be able to locate people within a building by floor and within a 3 meter by 3 meter space. And in order to do that, with 5G, we're not going to be able to use millimeter wave technology to penetrate that building. It's going to require an in-building network. It's going to require an in-building RAN of some sort, which is going to require an edge data center or private network, which I kind of view as the same thing, to support that. So it's a big application case there. Tom, I'll let you jump in on that.
Yeah, when we started defining the types of locations of data centers, we brought into the equation site selection. And one of the things we realized is that this network just doesn't, you're talking about virtual reality, there has to be some reality there, and that means there needs to be a network. And so when we looked at site selection, we looked at, say for instance, macro sites, where there's 200,000 macro sites in the U.S. today. There's 25,000 central offices. Those are great prime locations for putting a data center to do the edge function. Doesn't mean the whole system will be set up for that, but they are sites that have power and cooling. And so we can use those for defining them. So within that context, we wrote the document to say we're going to have cell and radio sites. That's again 200,000 macro sites. Those are node sites. They have access to a lot of users. They tend to cover coverage area about a mile or two per sector. And so you have access to users there at low latency, minimal hops. And then if you pull back a little bit to access sites, we look at macro hub sites. Those sites tend to have shelters. There's about a 20 to 1 aggregation from node sites to access sites or hub sites. So we thought that was another great location, and we defined a system associated with it. And that, what I mean by that is that's the number of racks, whether you have a walk-in or walk-up cabinet, which is kind of the type of the data center. Pull back a little further to aggregation sites. Those are regional data centers, your exchanges, internet exchanges. Those could be walk-in cabinets. They're larger, they serve larger groups, and they may go into a parking lot. Maybe they're purpose-built data centers. Associated with those would be something like a rack-based system that would go inside these central offices or core data centers that could be pods that are all-in-one or purpose-built. They provide the power and cooling in the systems. So within that context, we wrote the types of locations document to help serve the industry so that we can grow into it. Something that was mentioned about cars earlier, I tend to disagree with use cases and the cars and what we're trying to do. Cars didn't just come out of the ether. I mean, there was horse and buggy prior to them, and there was problems associated with it. There's an infrastructure there. There were roadways for people to get here and there. I mean, when we rate a car, we rate it on horsepower. So there are reasons why we're growing this network from a 2G, 3G, 4G, from what we have, from a fiber to the X. We're moving forward and we're developing systems to do that. But there is a starting point, and that's where we developed this document to start from somewhere and then grow into what this next network will be. We certainly will have use cases that will come out of it that are unknown at this point, but it's going to start from somewhere.
Very good, thank you, Tom. So if we're using this slide that's up now as kind of our Jeopardy board, pick a topic for $100 or whatever. We've covered all types and locations. We've covered site selection to some degree. I'm going to throw Allison the next one. Pick a category. Let me guess which one you might pick.
I'm going to go with ratings for $100.
Ratings for 100. I was shocked. I thought thermal cooling.
Yeah. I'm going to, I think it's really great what TIA is doing and determining how not only what the rating is, but how it's going to be rated. All right, so there's a lot at play here, and it was a pretty heavy part of the discussion yesterday. And at the end of the day, I think, and I'm gonna quote a famous Texan: we have to stop, collaborate, and listen. So, nobody got that? Sorry. No, we do, and we need to bring together different teams and different aspects of what we feel and how we believe that this will benefit and how it's going to be rated. There are several things that we need to work out, and so we're looking for some input. That's what part of our agenda yesterday, how it ended in fact, was to reach out and join forces, because it's pretty interesting. I was talking to somebody this morning. We're actually still trying to work out all the details of the edge, and that's a really great place to be. That someday, everyone in this room, you get to tell your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren, hey, yeah, we helped work out the edge, because that's how game-changing the edge is and will be. I think we have to get on our time travel caps to really realize exactly where we're headed, but I think that's the case.
Very good, thank you. So what Allison is referring to, yesterday at Dell headquarters up the road, we held our working group meeting face-to-face, and we had lots of participation. We covered all of these topics, and each of the subgroups reported back in on their progress. So we appreciate Dell for sponsoring that, as well as Crown Castle yesterday. And one of the things I did mention yesterday was I've been around in this industry, telecom, for almost 40 years, and I can think of 3 transformation points. And the first one was when we went to digital switching back in the early 80s, and I was installing DMS 10, DMS 100 switches. It was pretty cool. It was a defining moment. The next defining moment for me was when wireless took off in the late 80s, early 90s, TDMA, AMPS, TDMA, GSM, very exciting. And I think we're now in the middle of the third defining, which is restructuring the network, redefining what that network looks like. Edge is a huge part of what that network looks like. We've gone from a private network to a cloud-based network, and we're moving back to a combination of the two. So it's really exciting time. I'm going to turn it to Tom Wadowski to pick a topic for $100.
So I've been involved with the reliability, availability, serviceability group, the RAS group, as we like to affectionately call ourselves. And really, I think what we are learning is that there's going to be a lot of ways to slice how redundancy and reliability in these sites are going to be done. In certain instances, we're going to have network reliability where the sites are going to become redundant to one another, where the site itself won't be hardened to the point where it needs always-on type of requirements. In other cases, due to the criticality of the applications, it may very well be that that site needs to be very hard. And it'll be a site that'll be somewhere that basically gets no visits from anybody and has to operate on its own. And we'll probably do some sort of machine learning or AI type of diagnostics so that it can maintain its operations and let people know before there's actually a failure that there's something coming up and that site needs to be reconnoitered from the overall network. So, I think those are the things that we're looking at right now that are really still being defined in a lot of ways by some of the vendors who are out there running these applications and moving these things into reality. We talk about autonomous cars all the time, and I think it's interesting to say that really, if you look at cars of today, which are not autonomous, but almost are getting there, right, to the point of lane assist and on-side braking and things like that, these vehicles are all becoming their own edge data centers on their own. And really, a lot of the network systems that are being developed for what autonomous vehicles will become are the ability for handoffs to occur down the road. Because, it's easy to say when we're sitting here in Boston and there's an autonomous vehicle that's running around in the city that it's going to function and do everything it needs to be. But when you start getting out into the suburbs and further out where there's less and less infrastructure already built up, that's when you're going to need a lot of infrastructure developed in order for that autonomous vehicle to build homes.
Well, thank you, Tom. Tom Kraft, do you want to
Sure.
one category?
Well, you can't pick one.
Tom Kraft's involved in almost all of them.
So I'm going to pick three, but I'm just going to touch on, they all relate to the OAMA and specifically the automation piece. I think that's going to be important to add to that. The automation piece is really how you distribute these data centers. You're going to need to understand what is out here in order to ship workloads. So there's this inventory piece that I think is going to be critical. They talk a lot about zero touch, so that automation piece fitting there is going to be important. The RAS availability really is defined by reliability and serviceability and timely to repair. So, and availability hits on directly to the customer need. So customers are going to require low latency or some level of latency. They're going to require some level of throughput, and they're going to want to have the system up at a certain amount of time. So it affects the customer, and that's why I like that one. I think on the focus, it's important to focus on that one. And the last one is ratings. Being in the industry for a lot of years, over 30 years, we started out distributing not data centers, but in the telecom world, in cabinets outside. And the rating system that we do today is based on, well, what temperature is it going to comply to? So now you do this whole thing, you run the system up to 65, you run it down to -40, and it means something, but it doesn't necessarily harmonize well with the opposite side of what customers are buying the system for. And so we think about throughput and latency. We're trying to figure out how to take a salt fog environment where you're running 30 days through a salt fog. What does that mean to the availability of the system? And to work that type of rating system out. So I think some effort put into that will help us to better cost out these systems. Not one and done in a design when we do mass production, but more in the mass customization phase where we can actually design, purpose build, and deploy these systems to a cost, to a throughput, to a latency.
Excellent. We're always looking for additional help as well, so anybody that's not part of the TIA working group that wants to become part of it, by all means, this is industry-wide effort to standardize chaos and prosperity. This is going to be key as we move to an environment where we have unmanned remote locations. We have physical security to make sure that we've got that piece covered. I grew up in a day where, as an installer and then as a power climber, we had access, and we still have access to every basic compound that's out there. It's just the magic of one code based on the vendor. We're not going to be able to do that with edge data centers. It's going to require some very sophisticated security for access to the physical premise. And who's allowed to go in, and what are they allowed to do? What data are they allowed to claim off of that network? or that edge data center. Then cybersecurity becomes a huge problem as well. So there's a lot of activity going on in Washington right now. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to see some legislation that really focuses on supply chain, end-to-end supply chain for the telecommunications industry. It's going to impact edge, it's going to impact everything that we're doing. It's going to focus on what we can and can't do with certain countries and certain companies, and names will be named from understanding. So there's a lot of activity that needs to go on there. We're getting down to, we've got a few minutes left. I want to just give each person, start with Allison, an opportunity for closing comment or scenario case.
Yeah, no. I think that you were probably surprised I didn't pick thermal and cooling because we do immersion cooling. So I think there is an element of that we all need to pay attention to, is how we plan on cooling the densities in these environments. You're talking about, CPUs that, even just a couple of them, and there's no way to cool some of them in some of these smaller little edge deployments. So that is a real big topic as well that we personally are paying attention to it. Obviously, we have to pay attention to it. I really, yesterday kind of jumped on board to the use case team, and so I really like the idea of that. I know you said, stop talking about use cases, but I heard you, but it's now my job. No, I'm just kidding. So that is what we actually are looking for, is we would like to pick your brain. We want to talk about use cases on the edge. We understand proprietary information. We get that these people don't want to, have their name put out there, so we understand that. We can be very topical, but if we don't have some kind of open conversation about what is going on and how we're seeing this deployed, then we can't learn from each other, which is what, as I understand, this being that type of format, then we can't share. If we can't share those ideas, we can't learn from each other. And so come see me. I'm in booth 7 and 8, because we would love to have some information about use cases to use. So anyway.
Thank you, Allison. Tom?
I'll kind of follow on what Allison was saying. I think really, being in the industry as long as I have and looking at it from an engineering and consultative type of approach, really, so many customers are always looking for what is the best way to build out their sites and how can we deploy in a manner that's going to be consistent. They're going to know that something can actually be done where it's going to be reliable. It's going to be always on, and it's always going to be available to them. So really, what the TIA is doing with looking at edge data centers and their standardization is really just a follow-on evolution in the industry, because for so long we have organizations out there like Uptime Institute and things like that have really helped bring together what the data center means and how it's defined. And the TIA is not too documented. It's just kind of another evolutionary step of that. And really, we need to help get the industry to come together and really understand what the best way to put these systems in operation and have a consistent outcome. And that's really what we're trying to do on the group, and how everybody is kind of coming together from a manufacturer standpoint and a vendor standpoint. And really, we're trying to kind of pull that all together in a way that is going to be meaningful and really, an improvement to everyone within the industry as a whole.
Thank you. Tom Grant?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to pile on this one. We came here yesterday to discuss a standard. We spent the day talking about all of these items here, try to put a schedule together before we can write the standard. And the work that I've done over the last number of years is all about developing new technologies to create proof of concepts, to do some trials, to get this technology out there, to kind of push it forward. And when you do this, you do it on limited documentation. It's not but 6 months or a year when a question comes back as, hey, we see something going on at this site, we want to go fix it, and they ask, well, what's in there? And you look through your documentation and you really don't see the defining factors that determine what's really in there, what cable, what connector, how do you plug things in. So you go out to that site And crews spends days there trying to figure it out. They actually make cables on site. They're doing all these things to try to create a system that operates. And so what standards do is they create something, and let's face it, infrastructure, 20 plus years it'll sit out in the environment. And so you have to have that infrastructure well documented. You have to have standards written around it so that the service life of these systems is long. And so I encourage folks to get involved. We need people to help us. We don't know it all here clearly. And so if there is some interest, come and see us. And we'd love to get help writing these standards so we can just enable these technologies.
Great, thank you. And thank you to everybody on the panel for not only your contribution today, but for your contribution to the working group. Dean, I don't know if we have any time for questions. We have to take one or two. We do.
Yeah, we actually do have a few minutes. I'm going to invoke executive privilege and ask one of my own here, which is, you're representing the telecoms industry. In my view, the anchor tenant for telecoms providers' edge facilities is the internal uses of the telcos themselves for the distributed core networks of the future, or the centralized virtual RAN controllers. How much of what you're just doing and standardizing is sort of internally focused for the carriers, and how much is about the wider market for use cases for enterprise?
So I can answer from the telecom. My focus is telecom. CommScope has a lot of customers in that area, and so that's where we focus. That's where a lot of our background is, and so it's an easy step for us to get into it.
We actually did a paper last year called Central Office to Data Center Transition. And it was focused on how do we put data centers into a central office or an exchange environment, which is a very different environment. It has different rules around fire codes and safety and fire suppressant. And, so we built basically a matrix model of 3x3 with 9 different scenarios of how to put those edge data centers into the central office exchange. It's a great question.
We've got time for one or two more. If anyone wants to... Mike.
Thanks, Dana. I appreciate it. Mike Dana with Light Reading. And I wondered, you talked a lot about the hardware that the data centers will use, but I'm wondering if you could just speculate a little bit on the software that would run inside the data centers, and what company might sort of own that software area, because it seems to me like a company like Amazon or Microsoft or Google would be the one that would eventually, put the software in there that would make, edge computing work. But I'm just wondering what you have to say about sort of the big cloud providers and their role in running the software on those data centers.
We've been involved with some of the larger cloud providers in developing their data centers in general. But what we're seeing really is we're getting more and more of a meld between those providers and what application folks are developing for their own individual types of smaller apps. And again, they look at financial, they look at medical, like Allison was talking about. They're all starting to blend, really. So you look at Amazon or Google or Microsoft, and those become platforms really for what other folks are developing in specific applications that are now running out to the edge and being used there. They're not necessarily only the big folks that are kind of developing those applications specifically, but are using them as the vehicle basically to get there. So it's really becoming more and more application driven than anything else. There's not specific software that's kind of being used in one way or another, but in a lot of ways it's becoming the avenue for it to get there.
Any others?
Can we put up our contact information if anybody wants to?
Fantastic. Yep, it's up on the slides. Excellent. All right. Well, that was a really good panel, and I'd like you all to show your appreciation for Harry's moderation.